they're actually showing that a good mentee mentor really have to not only be vulnerable with each other, but to share our strengths and our limitations.
Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast, friends. I'm Kim Skorupski here at Hopkins with one of our podcast frequent flyers, Dr. Rachel Salas. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Kim.
Well, thanks for being back, Rachel. Those of you who are new to the podcast, you'll want to check out episode number 92, almost a couple years ago now, where Dr. Salas talked about strengths-based psychology. You may have heard of the Clifton Strengths Inventory. We spent a nice amount of time talking about John Clifton in the 90s doing in this Gallup process and organization about what are our strengths. And Dr. Salas led us through a really interesting conversation about how she's developed a whole program here at Hopkins, helping everyone, all team members, faculty, staff, even understanding patients and our strengths and how they contribute to our well-being and our success. And Dr. Salas, please, before I start yammering away, tell everybody again, remind everyone in podcast land who you are here at Hopkins, and then let's just get right into the strengths continuity.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And thanks, Kim, for inviting me back. I am today your local sleep neurologist. I'm a professor at Hopkins.
Like your local sleep. I love it. And you, that's so, everybody, this is very humble of Dr. Rachel Salas, Salas, because not only is she like super creative and innovative, but she's like a cartoonist. She does like all these really super cool interdisciplinary things. So she's being very humble, but definitely check out at Rachel Salas, MD and rsalas3 at jhmi.edu. But I'm going to let her take it away, and I'm going to try to be really quiet, which is going to be a challenge. Go ahead, Rachel.
I think a lot has happened since we last spoke, Kim. I have gotten on the coaching bandwagon, and I think it's much needed in academia, not just for faculty, but for residents, fellows, nursing students, medical students, everything. I've been just really focused on bringing coaching to those who need it. And those that don't know they need it, I'm trying to get the word out on how coaching and really a strengths-based psychology, in my case, has really just been transformative for me. I'm working with my team. We're developing a professional development program through the School of Education with a grant that I was awarded, and we're going to be implementing a lot of coaching and, definitely a strengths-based approach, but also building a community. And really, I think what my emphasis now is really kind of trying to find how we can leverage even peer coaches and how to kind of move that so we can support each other, not only so that our career can progress, but also that our wellness, our well-being, and, kind of bringing elements from my kind of sleep and wellness background into the work I'm doing in education.
That makes so much sense. I mean, we talk about group coaching as well. And you know that the WAG principle, the writing accountability groups, is kind of that structure is based around the group accountability and holding each other accountable to writing goals and writing behaviors. And so I think you're so right. There's so much power in the group network, this whole tribe of getting, and now more than ever, where so many of us, first, academic medicine is isolating anyway, before the pandemic. Now you throw the pandemic on top of this. Just a little sidebar, of course, I always have here we go, off track a bit. But here at Hopkins tomorrow, doesn't matter tomorrow in podcast land, but we have faculty orientation. And I surveyed the new faculty. We have about 300 some faculty in the School of Medicine who start every year. And we're doing an orientation for them. And I surveyed them. And one of the questions was, what kinds of topics would you like addressed at orientation, or what are you curious about? And I was surprised, about a third mentioned, how do I meet people? How do I network with people? How do I'm having a hard time just kind of like running into people in my own division or my own department. And I read those and I started thinking, are you kidding me? How is that even possible? Then I kind of had to actually stop and realize Right. Oh, so many faculty who joined within the past year or so joined during the pandemic. So there is no hanging out in the lounge or running into each other at the water fountain or at the coffee bar or at the coffee place in the hospital. Everybody's purposely not being close to each other. So, people are starting a new job at a new institution, newly minted, perhaps academic person, and they're all alone. And it's to me, it's even much more apparent that we do need a tribe of people. So I love that you're, really getting into the peer coaching and this group concept, but tell us more about it, because I think it's just fascinating. You're fascinating anyway, but how you go from sleep disorders to strengths and then to coaching and all of this kind of evolution is fascinating.
Yeah, I think one of the things that has drawn me to strengths is like, we're constantly being told, the things that we need to do better, right? You need to increase your RVUs, you need to get more publications, you need to do whatever. And the strengths-based approach was a breath of fresh air because it kind of identifies like what you're naturally good at. And the idea is it opens a path, a new starting point to really kind of progress in your professional development and work towards like, let's see what I'm already kind of naturally good at and let's, sharpen it. And that has been helpful. And then the next step is at the end of the day, people just want to be recognized for who they are and they want to be heard. And I think that, as my partner in crime, Dr. Charlene Gamaldo, who's also a certified strengths coach and a life coach, we've started a CME/CE program here at Hopkins for faculty, within the School of Medicine, but also beyond. It's a new program that's open to all of Hopkins and beyond. And people are coming, and it's providing a safe place to kind of learn a little bit more about yourself, really see how you can fit in with others in your team, in the healthcare team, wherever you're practicing, whatever you're doing, even at home. And it really just kind of lets people the opportunity to shine. And kind of going on what you were saying, the accountability part, I think is key. And that's one of the reasons I'm focused on that for my new professional development program that we're doing for health professions educators, which is really to let people know you're not alone. And a lot of the things that you're struggling with, the imposter phenomenon, at times feeling overwhelmed or you didn't get that award or whatever the case is to have somebody there that understands and is going to support and see you for who you are and really, kind of just build that community. I think it's so important.
Mm-hmm. You talked last time, I'm looking at my notes here. And again, the Clifton strengths, you might want to Google this if you've not heard yet about it, but Dr. Salas shared that her strengths are individuation, strategic adaptability, arranger, activator. And I'm saying these words just so that you have a sense of what are they talking about strengths? Like, what do you mean the bicep strength, the strength of what? And my strengths are input, strategic, futuristic, achiever, intellection. So how many are there? How many? 34, right?
34.
So you get through this assessment tool, you learn, again, like what you're saying, your innate top strengths. And you also pointed out last time in episode number 92, which I was shocked to find out that in the literature, feeling valued, you're 6 times more likely to be engaged, you said. Mm-hmm. When people are working in their, the groove or in the flow of their feeling valued for their strengths and working on their strengths, 3 times more likely to rate a higher quality of life. So there's literature around this, and it just makes so much common sense. First of all, like you said, feeling like you have value and meaning and purpose. But it's not so obvious, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about how, if faculty members are listening to this right now and thinking, is this just another Myers-Briggs? Is this just another one of those EQ tests, Enneagram kind of things? What makes this so special?
Yeah, I think it's just another tool, right? And there's a lot of assessments out there, and I chose to get certified in this particular one, but I'm using several other ones now, really to get a better perspective on my dimensions of my, who I am and what's important to me, what my values are. There's all these other things that play a role. And so for me, strengths was really kind of my starting point, right? It was just something to react to. And no matter who you are, whether or not you're going to, identify some challenges with strengths-based psychology, that's fine because nothing's perfect, but it's a starting point. And, no matter who you are, chances are you're going to apply for a new position somewhere or a new role. And, more often than not, you're going to be asked, like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And so for me, when I found my top 5, first of all, individualization, my number 1, I didn't even recognize that as a strength. I literally thought everyone had that. Yeah. Just like, what do you mean? So, individualization is kind of like the person who I'm really good at finding the right person for the right role or job. In fact, we've utilized this skill set in the sleep center. And Charlene will have me kind of do the initial vetting of, interviewees that, and then if they make it past me, then she knows like, okay, Rachel saw something here, so probably bringing in a little of my strategic. And so we've been able to really leverage not only our own strengths, but the strengths of our team. And I've just found it so fascinating because one of my struggles was the activator. I think I talked about this last time, that it was actually, I was shocked that wasn't even a strength because I always found it to be a weakness. And the reason was it was dialed up too much. It was dialed too high. And so when I put some intention and really developed it, just like, if you want a 6-pack, right, you can't just wake up with that. You got to go to the gym, you got to eat right. So I worked on my activator. And wow, like I was just blown away on how much success that came by me doing that.
So can you pause a second? Tell people, what is activator? What do you mean by my activator? What is activator and why was it too strong? So that's because an interesting twist on our strengths can be overplayed or overdone.
Right. And I think that's one of the big messages when you look at a strengths-based approach, right? Not everybody is like, oh, these are your strengths. It's like, no, these are your natural talents. And the idea is you put some intention and you develop those, then they can become strengths. So for me, the activator, which is it's my number 5, right? An activator, again, another word I probably would have never used if somebody said, what are your strengths? I would probably not said activator, but activators are people that can get things going, right? Like we can get things started. I'm really good about getting other people very motivated, inspired. I'm just good at it. If you told me not to do that, I couldn't help it, right? So me, kind of being at Hopkins in academia, when you have a new idea, you want to go, or at least I do. And I've, for a long time was told like, no, we got to have these meetings. You got to get this approval. You got to, present it here. And it's like, what? So I was getting drained. But once I learned more about the activator and how to really leverage it, how to understand it, I learned the word pilot, which seems very obvious and simple. But now I'm like, hey, we're just going to do a pilot. And people are like, oh, you're just going to do a pilot. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, just do a pilot. I'm like, if it doesn't work, it was a pilot. But if it works, I'm going to have some data and maybe I can apply for a grant or I can write it up. And people are like, oh, yeah. So I've learned, instead of feeling drained all the time by being told, no, 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 no. Now I'm like, hey, let's just do a pilot. It's easy. Let's just see what happens. Let's just go with it. And then, you can hear my adaptability and my arranger, my other 2 strengths that are tapping in there, and just being very flexible. And this has really been my strengths have been so helpful during this pandemic. Just being quick to pivot, learn, mess up, learn from that, move on, keep going.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the basic principle that we always talk about in any kind of development context or leadership development, that knowing ourselves is the beginning of all wisdom. That Socratic principle. Was it Aristotle? I never know if it's Socrates or Aristotle. One of these old guys said, knowing ourselves is the beginning of all wisdom. And that is the fundamental question, right? Of who am I? Why am I here? And so I like that you emphasize this is another tool. And it's not just a matter of, oh, I'm an outgoing person. Oh, I'm an extrovert. Oh, I'm a feeler, or I'm a thinker. Done. Checklist. Pull out your identification badge and just show people these words. You said that it's being aware and mindful of what does that mean, because this is something foremost in my ability or predisposition. Now that's not enough, because you can't just say, well, that's just the way I am. You know how I am. That's just the way God made me. Rather, how can I maximize this? And where do I mess up when I'm doing this? And you said something else that was so interesting and important, is that I thought everybody had that. And that's where I went wrong early in my career too, when I would get so short. I'm very impatient. So I would be very brusque and abrasive and short and terse. And I knew I was coming out that way, because I could almost feel my face going, "Ugh," because I would get frustrated that I thought people were almost being purposely aggressive or passive aggressive with me. Like, isn't it so obvious? Until someone actually took me aside and said, Kim, it's not obvious. I can see you getting angry and impatient. Why are you feeling that way? And I would always feel like, well, I feel like I'm being threatened, like people are purposely trying to dissuade me or frustrate me. And it really was a kind of I want to say a throat punch, like the current popular culture. It was like a whammo for me to go, whoa, you mean that's not obvious to people? And they're like, no, of course not. You just you're way ahead of everybody because you've been thinking about this. You need to slow your roll, take a breath. And so what you described in your storytelling was the similar kind of recognition that reframe, call it a beta test, a pilot test. And now all of a sudden people are more amenable, rather than us steamrolling going, I know darn well it's going to work, but I have to put myself, that's leadership, right? That emotional intelligence, learning not only ourselves and how to manage ourselves, but learning how other people function and how to manage those relationships.
Yeah. No, I perfect. You're saying everything. I mean, it's like we're on the same wavelength. Harvard Business Review had an article about the fallacy of ease, and it talks about these two things. The one part is what I did with individualization, which was I assumed everyone else has it. So what am I doing to myself, right? I'm not giving myself credit for being talented in that area, right? So you're just like, oh, everybody must have it. And so you assume. And the problem with that is that if you assume everyone's like that, for one, you're not giving yourself that recognition and that acknowledgement. But number two, then I might be I may expect too much in that category from others. Like, oh, Kim, you why don't you see this? Why can't you do this? Or what, and so that's not playing into what the strengths of others are, right?
Right.
So when I feel myself, getting like you were saying, like impatient, because that's the other, you're an achiever, I'm an activator. They're very similar. I want to get things started. I may not necessarily finish it because my strategic or something else might come in and be like, okay, I have new information. That was just a pilot anyway. Who cares, right? But the achiever, you're like, no, I'm not only going to start it, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to be number one, right? So you can see how they complement, right? But you can see how they're a little different. But one of the things that was really helpful with the strengths-based approach is it's not personal. When somebody's asking me questions, well, why did you do this? Well, why didn't you do that? Or did you think about this? Or did you look at this? I used to take it personal. I'm like, why are they asking me these questions? How about, I'm the boss here, like just go with it, right? And now it's just like, oh, that person is like a learner. They just want to know. Or like input, with your number one being input, likes a lot of information, right? Like wants to get that info, knows something about a lot of things, right? And so now it's really helped with my overall well-being because it's not personal. Now, sometimes it is personal, right? Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not.
It's the stories we tell on ourselves, and we tell ourselves stories all day long. You said that, make assumptions. And then we make these assumptions, which goes back to grammar school of what we learned about what an assumption, making an assumption makes an ass out of you and me. I remember learning that now as a young girl going, oh, they said a bad word, but that's how you use ASSUM. And I remember being young and learning that and never really understanding it until I've gotten older and go, yeah, we make assumptions all day long because it's efficient, right? It's the way you're a neurologist, how our brain needs to go to resolution. And so we put things in boxes and go, yes, that is a danger. That is a friend. That is a foe. And the same thing. Wow, why is he being a jerk to me? Or why are they questioning me? After all, I just published on this. You're doubting me? And you're right. We make these assumptions that, oh, they think I'm not good enough. They think I'm not smart, or I think I'm not good. I think I'm not smart. So the stories we tell ourselves all day long say something about us. And then inevitably, then that's going to project. If I'm judging myself so harshly and having such a high standard for myself, that's inevitably going to go push out to everybody else. And then that's where a lot of these relationships will fall apart, right? That we because of those assumptions.
Yeah. I mean, I think imposter phenomenon is totally tied to this, because if you assume that, oh, everyone must be good at this, everyone must be like me, then again, you're not going to be recognized. You're always going to say, well, then it was luck, right? It's luck when you get stuff, and we can't control luck, right? But if we say, no, I got that recognition, or I got that paper, done, or I got that project accomplished, and it was because of my strengths or because of the team and how we leveraged our strengths together. And I love that the strengths-based approach really celebrates diversity, beyond gender, race, ethnicity, our past experiences, our skill sets, and talking from a interprofessional healthcare team, it celebrates individuals by who they are, what they're naturally good at. And I just love that. And it also really shows us how we need each other. We need people. Humans, we're social beings, but yeah, you got to develop yourself, and that's important. But how do you fit with other people, and how can you work together to really have better outcomes and, ultimately in healthcare, have better patient care, higher value care?
Two things I want to get from you before our time is up. And one is I want to learn about the coaching. I don't know if I want to say get high level, like your philosophy, but how you see the coaching playing out operationally. And I would also love for you to share a story of how the strengths tool can change, say, a clinical practice or a research lab environment. So I'm imagining that there are new folks out here in Faculty Factory podcast land who didn't listen to episode number 2 with Dr. Rachel Salas and don't know anything about the Clifton strengths and say, well, I'm not sold. This is nice. It sounds great. But practically, I work at a busy clinic. I'm seeing patients all day long, and I don't have time to stop and reconfigure things. Or I work in a busy lab. We're trying to get grants. We're trying to write papers. We're processing cell cultures. We don't have time for all this stuff. Can you paint a picture for someone listening of how this tool might amplify the work that happens in the clinic or in the lab?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of us have multiple roles, but one of the roles that frequently comes up, especially as a faculty, but you can say the same for, anybody, whatever career you are, you can always serve as a mentor for someone else, right? And so in the mentorship role, and you can even use mentorship even as a clinician with your patients, right? So imagine that somebody walks into the room. I'll just use a patient because I'm using this tool with some of my patients. So a patient walks into the room. I have a certain amount of time that I need to see what are the issues this patient's having in terms of their sleep. We all know that life plays a role in how someone sleeps, right? If you're stressed out, if you're worried, if you're, environment, there's all these other things in life that plays a role. And part of that is, do people have goals? Do they have, what are their values? What are their past experiences? All of these things factor in. So imagine that you're pressed for time. You know that there's this big elephant in the room, and that big elephant is huge, right? And it's impacting, but we can't talk about that elephant because we can only talk about your sleep, right? But if I walk into that room and I already know my patient, that person that's sitting in front of me, and this is I'm going to, throw a little recognition to Dr. Roy Ziegelstein, our vice dean for education at Hopkins and a cardiologist, but coined the term personomics. Really, really getting to know that person sitting in front of you. And while I might not know all of my patients' past experiences, what their worries, what their concerns, stressors are, if I at least know what their top 5 talents are, maybe their strengths, if I can kind of go into and I can at least give them the information the way that they would probably prefer. For example, if somebody's a learner, that patient's probably going to want some resources. They're going to want material that they can take home and read, right? They're going to want to know, like, what's the latest and greatest information's out there for this particular diagnosis. Perhaps my patient is high in analytical. They're going to want to know the data. I can't just tell them the report says blah, blah, blah. They're going to want to know the numbers. They're going to want to know what this means, what that means. So that already has allowed me to better connect with the person in front of me. And so if you apply that example to your postdoc, your pre-med student, your peer, whoever that person is that's seeking, advice, connection from you, it just helps you kind of cater to and personalize things a little bit more. And I've just noticed for me, a lot of my interactions, not only with patients that I've used this with, but also with my mentees, have been more authentic and more genuine. And there's literature out there to support this. If you look at the, mentorship in STEM, they're actually showing that a good mentee mentor really have to not only be vulnerable with each other, but to share our strengths and our limitations. And that's where that human connection is. So it's really just helped me have more genuine, authentic relationships, no matter who the person I'm interacting with.
That is beautiful. Tell me, just clarify the limitation. So my brain can easily envision a scenario, dyad with a patient, a peer, a colleague, a mentor, a trainee, where I have put myself in the mindset of what is this other person's strengths, and we build on each other's strengths, and I lift that up and I encourage and I inspire. Where does the limitations of me and them come up? How do we delicately dance around, not ignore, but not go dark with the limitations, So how do you get that balance? Talk a little bit more about the limitations side of it.
Yeah. And I think this is where coaching has been, helpful, right? So just really understanding, and it's difficult as a physician, right? A lot of times people are coming to me for advice, like, you tell me what to do, right? And so switching from that doctor to the mentor, which is different. Like, this is, have you thought about this? Like, giving examples versus coaching, really allowing that individual, no matter who they are, the patient, the student, whoever, really being a mirror for them, so that you could ask them questions where you're not telling them what to do, but you're allowing them to kind of process and kind of come up with their own solutions. So I think one of the potential pitfalls we need to worry about, and for the naysayers out there against the strengths-based approach, because it's like, oh, everything's so positive, you're like rose-colored glasses and da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, like, there's weaknesses, but the weaknesses are not what your bottom, of the 34 are. That's just those bottom ones. That's just not who you are. You can try it. You can do those things. Of course, we can all do things we are not naturally good at. But the weaknesses are actually when we have our strengths dialed way too high or dialed too low. So it's important for me when I'm, talking with individuals and I get a sense, like, on my end, am I getting impatient? Why am I getting impatient or annoyed? And it's like, okay, maybe my activator's dialed up too much. Let me bring that back. Or if it's on the other side, if it's the person that I'm interacting with and they have something dialed up too low. And this is where I think the training and coaching helps me to kind of ask those questions. Well, why is that? Tell me a little bit more. Why do you feel that way? Why are you? And getting them to kind of process and seeing, wow, I am dialed up too much here. So this is like this top strength for me, because I have a lot going on. I'm very overwhelmed. I'm stressed and it's dialed too high. And here's why. And so then you can kind of unpack that.
I love it. So that is exactly, it's perfect the way you've kind of gone into this coaching. And that is what good coaches do. We're thought partners, right? The thought partners. And that is the nuance between the mentoring. You should think about ABC versus what do you think you should think about? And can you just get into something? One of my struggles as I got certified as coaching was almost, this is maybe, I don't know what, this is a strength of mine that's overplayed, where I'll be almost like biting my fingernails going, oh my gosh, it's so obvious to me what you should do. What can I just like put my head through the monitor and just grab you and say, please just do this and you'll be fine. So it's kind of a limitation thing, or that subtlety. How, when you are with a patient or a trainee or a coaching client, how does a coach navigate that frustration where you almost like a red light going, I see it. The train's coming and they're not seeing it. Well, our thought partnering is done. Time's up today. Good luck avoiding that train.
Yeah, Kim, it's so funny. There's actually a video. It's on YouTube. It's called It's Not About the Nail, the NAIL. And it's like that person with the nail and the lady is like, I take off my sweaters and they get snagged and I have this headache. And she's like, and it hurts right here. She's pointing to this big nail that's in her forehead. And it's a great video if you haven't seen it, because like as a coach, you definitely experience what you were just saying, right? You're like, why can't you, if you just did this, right? Like
take the nail out of your head.
Take the nail out, right? But I think, it unless that person comes to that conclusion on their own, like I think that's where the big transformations really happen. It's for them to identify whatever the issue is and what the solutions are, because if we go and tell them, right, then it's just them not processing. And if something doesn't go right or the way they thought, then you can build up issues with resentment or guilt. There's other things that can kind of play out. So it's really important for, I think, the word coach, and I know I've had conversations with you offline about like, is coach really the best word the way we use it in academia? You think about a surgeon, for example, or a sports coach, like they're actually focused on skills, right? But I think the way that you and I and many others, not just at Hopkins, but outside too, it's a professional development aspect. And so like, we're not really coaching in that way. You're really trying to help people really become who they're becoming. So now we're going to get philosophical, but, really kind of starting to guide and let them really just be more of them and pulling that out and getting them to like question, well, why do I feel this way? Why do I think like that? Why was I upset? What happens when I am in the flow that you were talking about earlier as we started? And that's a journey. And so I really see myself as trying to kind of step back and over time, I've gotten better at trying to like point at the nail for them and letting them just asking those questions. I mean, it really is a skill set. And I'm really ecstatic that people in academia, especially in healthcare, are really like looking into like the benefits of coaching and how we can really make this a big cultural change so that people feel supportive. They feel like my mentor is not trying to make me them. They're really just trying to help me on my journey of what I'm becoming and what my definitions of success and happiness are and what my values are, and not forcing it down, my throat.
You're so right, because I keep thinking when I've had so many experiences where when I, in my arrogant demeanor, have said, well, it's so obvious to me, Rachel Salas, what you should or shouldn't do, what will many times happen is that the person will yeah, but me. I call it the yeah, but syndrome. It's the yeah, but. And then when I hear too many yeah, buts, that I'm thinking, you don't want to hear me. You're not hearing me. Or now you're just going to humor me and say, okay, all right, fine. I'll take this nail out of my head. Whatever. Yeah, but okay, nail's gone. And the next time you see him, like, oh, that's another little nail in there. That they just went ahead and put another nail up in there. Wait, you're back in the nail situation. No, I'm not. Yeah, but. So I think you're so right in calling that out, that and that again, psychological, where we're getting kind of really deep here. I don't want to get too deep, but it's the whole thing of when you do things for people, you're not necessarily helping them. But give a fish, teach a fish concept as well. I could do a workaround and make this a lot quicker and easier, but you're not learning from it. I'm not learning from it. We're getting it done, but are we really growing? Are we really going to that next level? So I love how you put that it's that patience and that taking the time to see somebody where they are. That's the beauty of coaching. And folks, if you are interested in coaching, learning more, please go to facultyfactory.org. We're assembling a new team of coaches, and Dr. Rachel Salas is going to be on that coaching team, and you can contact her and find her at Rachel Salas MD, or email her rsalas3, RSALAS3 at jhmi.edu. Dr. Rachel Salas, parting thoughts are yours.
I will just put this out there. I think I love to be as transparent as I can be. And I think like somebody might be listening and saying, oh, okay, she's certified in this and has done the coaching and has implemented in not only my programs, but also my clinical practice. But I actually have 2 coaches at the moment. I do coaching more like for leadership. I'm kind of doing a deeper dive on my like strengths. And so once a month, I have protected time for 1 hour just to get coaching really around that and my values and my, my next steps, not just in my career, but in life. And then I have more of a professional academic coach. And I think you're going to be interviewing him, Brian Klein, who is a med ed person up at Brown. And, I've been able to, I love the different kind of dimension of coaching from him because someone, as he's a physician, he's a certified coach, and really kind of can relate to a lot of the issues or things that, I'm thinking about as well. So I just want to put that out there because it's a life journey. And, just because you're certified in something, I mean, I'm constantly growing in who I am. And, next week I'll be a different person because I'm constantly thinking about, who I am, how can I be better? And I'm really in a growth mindset. And if Carrie Bischoff, who's my other coach, who really got me into strengths, or Brian, I this year is all about transformation for me, for sure. So I'm excited to see where I'm going to be this time next year. But no matter what it's going to be an adventure, and I'm so excited.
Wow, it's so obvious. I'm always thrilled talking with you because you are such an inspirational, creative, energetic force. And I thank you for everything you've done for us here at Hopkins and continue to do. And thanks for being on the podcast. Dr. Rachel Salas, folks. I'm sure you loved her as much as I do. Please come back to the Faculty Factory next time. Till then, bye-bye.
Hello, Faculty Factory listeners. It's your friendly podcast producer here, Casey Callanan. Just to remind you, if you didn't already know it, the Faculty Factory is now offering coaching. You can learn more by visiting facultyfactory.org/coaching. Faculty Factory Coaching is about building a thriving clinical, educational, and research career to be successful beyond all your expectations. Most of all, it's about living a joy-filled life. To learn more about Faculty Factory Coaching, drop us a line over at facultyfactory.org/coaching, and you can learn more there.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.